Hey guys, Rocky here back at you. Got a little bit of an update on the Suzuki issue. As you probably recall, I last left you quite frustrated with the fact that I could not get any ignition, could not get any spark to my spark plugs. And I didn't know if it was a CDI, didn't know if it was a coil, wiring issues, stripped all the wiring, disconnected everything, tried to find any breaks in wiring, stuff like that, bypassed everything, trying to just narrow everything right down to just what I needed for ignition only in case there was a short somewhere. And was having a lot of trouble trying to figure out what it was. And the good news is that I did figure out what the problem is, and the way I figured it out, essentially, well, sort of led up to it, was the fact that I found a video on there where one gentleman said any of the old CDI boxes, any of them, usually the ones that are packed in like kind of a gel or something to protect the electronics, over time, apparently that seal with that gel or compound, whatever it is not 100% foolproof. Apparently, over time, it heats up, cools down, heats up, cools down, and it will draw moisture into the box and causes problems. So I guess another issue with it too is that over time some of the solder joints do crack and separate. It's another issue. But this guy, what he was suggesting with the one, where there could potentially be moisture in it, he was saying, and I kind of laughed when I first saw this, I thought maybe it was a joke, but not a joke. He said what you do is you take the CDI box off with your wires and everything attached to it. Some of the wires you can't take off unless you take it apart and scrape all the gel out somehow and unsolder the wires. But some of the wires come off with it. You have to take them off with it. And two plugs, usually two plugs that connect into the harness, come off with it as well, and they're attached to the wires. But he said, go into the house, turn your oven up to 300 degrees, and throw the CDI box in with the electronic side, the gel side facing up, and let it sit in there for 10 minutes. He said he went 10 minutes. He said some cases 15. He said it depends. He may have tried a couple times, but he said 75% of the time that'll evaporate the moisture out of the box, and then you can go ahead and seal the box anywhere you see where there might have potentially been areas where moisture could have gotten into the box. He said a lot of times the way the boxes are designed is the bottom end that hangs down this way on the bottom side, and that section is the part of the gel or resin or whatever it is that's exposed. And he said after you've heated them in the oven and dried them out, evaporated them out, let them cool down, you can put some kind of a sealant back over that, and that'll protect it. And he said 9 times out of 10 that'll, well, 75% of the time, he said, not 9 times out of 10, he said 75% of the times that'll fix it. He said he's done it many times himself. And I just kind of thought it was a joke. I started reading the comments underneath, and I probably read at least 100 comments, if not more. And there were guys out there saying the same thing. They thought he was crazy, thought it was a joke. They tried it. Sure enough, they had bikes and ATVs and all kinds of stuff, and even boats that had sat for 10, 12 years, would run, no fire. Couldn't figure out why. Figured it was a CDI box and didn't want to spend the money on it. So, they pulled it out, stuck it in the oven like he suggested, and took it out. Put it on the unit, tested to make sure it worked. Sure enough, worked. First time in 10, 12 years, the application would fire up, whether it be a bike or a boat, and then they would just seal that and get another, maybe 5 years or whatever out of it, right, or more, who knows. But that kind of prompted me to taking mine off and having a look at it. So I did. I took it off. I looked at it. Mine actually doesn't have any resin or any gel or anything like that in it. It just was the board itself set in between a cap, a metal cap, square cap, rectangular cap, whatever, and then a bottom piece, flat piece that bolted onto that. The actual board itself attached straight to the bottom piece and grounds through the bottom piece where you bolt it onto the bike. So it actually does have to be bolted onto the bike in order to get this ground. But what I did is I took it apart, put it in the oven for, I think 10 minutes at 300. I watched 10, 11 minutes. Shut the oven off, let it sit there a little longer while the oven cooled down. So I took it out, figured that's not going to really make any difference for me because mine didn't have any resin or gel or anything that would hold moisture in it. So I thought, that's probably not going to make any difference. So I figured while I had it apart, I might as well look at the board really close too and see if there's anything that looked like it needed to be resoldered or whatever. And just by chance, I happened to notice right along the outer edge, it looked like it was a little spot there that seemed kind of strange, a little dark, and kind of looked like it was a break. And I got looking at it a little closer, and sure enough, there was a piece of coming off. There were 2 units, one over here and one over here, and one of the leads from each one plugged onto this one section on the board that actually had the copper tracer going across. and it went down and across, and then across and over and up to the other one. Right in the middle, right on the very edge of the board, that was split. I could see that it was actually raised up a little bit off the board, each end of it. So I kind of pushed that down. There was enough copper showing there. I didn't have to sand it or do any rubbing on it to get it to clean up a surface for the solder to stick. Then I took my soldering gun and I managed to get a piece of solder across those two joints, bridge that section there that was definitely separated. And I thought, well, you know, either I broke that when I took it apart, which I really didn't think I did. I wasn't sure, but I didn't think I did because I couldn't see how I could have done that. So I was hoping that was the case, that I didn't break it. It was like that to begin with. So I soldered it, put it back together. I saw a couple other joints that looked a little questionable. I think they were okay, but they looked a little questionable, so I threw a little solder on those too just to be sure. And I stuck it all back together, put it on the bike, come out, put a couple squirts of quick start in the intake here. Well, actually, before I put the quick start in the intake, I had one plug still out laying there where I had been testing it, and I had the wire connected to it. And you know, this plug right here was out, and it was laying here with the wire attached. I figured I'll just crank it, see if there's any fire. Cranked it, boom, fire. It's like, whoa, dude, I think we got her fixed. So I stuck that plug back in, put the wire back on, and like I said, put a couple squirts of the good old quick start stuff into the intake, and where did it go? Lost it. There you go. This stuff here, a couple of squirts of that in there. You gotta be careful with that stuff, very flammable. Put a couple of squirts in there and bridge that solenoid here with a screwdriver because I don't have everything hooked up here again. Bridge that, and that cranked the engine over, and boom, she fired up. You know, she ran off that for about 2 seconds off that quick start. So problem fixed, guys. It was an issue with the CDI box. I don't know. I don't understand why one coil was getting warm, one wasn't, all that stuff. I have no idea. Obviously, their coils are okay, bike fired up. So I'm not going to worry myself too much about, you know, why this, why that, how this, how that. The fact of the matter is the CDI box had a break in it. I found it. I soldered it. Saved myself probably a couple $100, if not more. And you know, if that had been the case, I probably would just scrap the bike or try to sell it for parts or something, because I wasn't going to spend a couple $100 on it. If I'm going to spend any money on it at all, it's just going to be money to register it, and that's it, right? The rest was just going to be the way it is. I'm going to fix it with what I've got, and I'm going to drive it, and that's it. So I guess what that means is that now that I know it will run, I know I can register it and drive it. The next thing would be to get all the wiring back into place, all the wiring that I'm going to need. I'm not sure, you know, I'll put signal lights and stuff on it at some point. I don't think I'm going to need it right away, but probably wouldn't be a bad idea to have it. Most of the people out on the road wouldn't have a clue when you give them a hand sign which way you're going to go anyway. So, you know, that's not a foolproof method for signaling where you're going to go. Stick your arm out one way or the other, people just don't even think you're waving, probably. Most people just think you're waving at them. You know, but, so it'd be a good idea to have brake lights at least. You got to have a brake light, and probably should have signal lights. So, but we'll focus on the brake light first, because that's absolutely essential. Got to have a brake light on it. Can't drive without that. And I know that the bulb is good. I know the wiring is good there. So I'll try to reattach that, see what I get. I'll put the ignition back on the ignition switch and see if that ignition switch actually works the way it's supposed to. Just reconnect everything back up and see if I can get it to crank on the starter button. And if I can, what I'll probably do is I'll probably take this off here and solder the wires back on for the switch, so I can actually turn it on and off by the switch, and then I'll be able to crank it with the starter button down here. Get that bare essentials into place, those bare essentials into place, and I might want to make sure that I reconnect my lever wires for my clutch lever, because I want to make sure that you know, I can't start it up while it's in gear. That definitely should be reconnected. So the next thing is, long story short, I got to go at it. I got to reattach any wires that need to be reattached, and then tape up. Put the other ones aside for later when I decide if it's something else I need to put back on and get working. I'll still have everything there to do it with. So I'm going to get at it right now, and then once I have all the wires and everything back into place, gas tank back on it, and I can fire it up off the gas tank, and I know it's running off the gas that's in the gas tank, then we've got something we can talk about. Then from there we can go forward, and what I want to do is, what I'm thinking on doing here is I want to cut this joint here, same on the other side, and I want to cut this joint down here, same on the other side, and I want to shorten this up What I'm going to do is disconnect the shocks, and I'm going to drop this whole seat part down. It's going to drop down probably about 3 inches, I think, if I can get away with 3 inches. Now you're going to ask yourself, how's he going to do that? You know, the wheel's going to start hitting on the unit up here, but it's not, because I'm going to cut this off. I want to cut this off. I'll put it away and save it, so if I ever want to put it back on, I can, but I'm going to cut that off. And now you say, well, what are you going to do about your shocks? You know, you're dropping this down 3 inches. Well, I'm going to do like you see on a lot of the bikes, like my Dyna, for instance. The shock actually mounts up top here, sticks up just behind the seat. So what I'll do is I'll kind of take what they have here for a tab, or put a new tab up on here, and have the shock attach up here. Essentially, that'll drop the bike 2.5, maybe 3 inches, right? It'll actually, well, it doesn't really drop the bike. What it'll do is it'll drop the seat down 2 to 3 inches, so it gives me a chance to sit down lower to the ground. Not that you can't reach the ground on the bike, you can. This is essentially a good way to drop the ride height, the seat, not the ride height, the seat height where the driver sits, without lowering the bike, because I don't want to lower the bike, because I don't want to start dragging on the ground every time I make a turn, right? But that'll let me drop the seat down. And then in effect, after that, it won't matter, you know, if I put the tank back on just the way it was before, or rig up something else, or put a Hardy tank or something on it, whatever the case may be. The tank is automatically going to sit higher, because now the seat's lower, right? So it already starts to give it that chop look. But I do want to potentially maybe do something to give it a kind of a Harley tank look, like a Sportster look, or a Bobber tank look, or something a little different. I mean, initially I might start out with the original tank, put that back on, see how that looks with the seat drop down and stuff. I'm going to have to make a custom seat of some sort. I'm not going to be able to use the original seat. I really don't want to cut that seat. If I had to, I could cut that seat down, you know, and make it a bit smaller by taking maybe this section here. But I'm not sure if I want to go that route. I'll figure it out, you know, or even if you were to cut it across here and use this section. Either way, I'll figure the seat out. You know, it's going to be a custom seat of some sort, obviously. So like I said, I'm going to cut this short now, because I've got quite a bit of work to put the wires back on. I'm going to get at that right now. I want to get the wires back on, the tank back on, and get it running off the gases in the tank. Once I have that, I can move forward to start doing the chop stuff. So I'll keep you guys informed. I'll throw another video out there in a bit. But for now, that's a success story that I wanted to share with you guys. So in the meantime, peace out.